Hey everybody, it's Miss C, fourth grade teacher at Syracuse Academy of Science and Citizenship Charter School. Today is our second lesson in social studies and it is on feudalism. Now that we just learned about the agricultural revolution, and that was a time a long time ago when people transitioned from being hunter-gatherers to and moving around a lot to staying in one place where they could farm their food and raise animals. So feudalism is a more advanced way of living, and this was during the medieval times, which we learned little bit about in the beginning of the year during CKLA. So let's learn more about feudalism. You see a picture of a castle here, and that is our first hint as to what feudalism has to do with. So we're going to go over a little bit of vocabulary first. Feudalism, or also known as the feudal system, is the social system that developed in Europe in the 8th century. Vassals were protected by lords who they had to serve in war. What is a vassal? A vassal is a person who held land from a feudal lord and received protection in return for homage and allegiance. So a vassal is someone who is going to work on the land that the lord gives them, and they are going to produce their own food through farming, through agriculture, and then they're going to pay homage, or they're going to give the lord some of their share of the crop. A serf, you might remember, is a member of the lowest feudal class, and they are legally bound to a landed estate and required to perform labor for the lord of that estate in exchange for a personal allotment of land. So vassals have more freedom than serfs do. Serfs are kind of, we think they're kind of enslaved. They are bound to that land. That means that they can't leave that land. And if you remember learning, if you are born into a serf family, then that child who is also a serf now is also bound to that land. A lord is a man of high rank in a feudal society or in one that retains feudal forms and institutions. I'm not sure why I put especially there, but we're just going to ignore that. Taxes are a contribution. Let's see if I can get that way. A contribution for the support of a government required of persons, groups, or businesses within the domain of that government. So people, you might have heard, we pay taxes and money. Well, back then, taxes were paid by people like vassals and serfs in the form of food or in crops. So kings. Kings run the show in the feudal system. The king owned all of the land in a kingdom. You see him here with his crown and his cape and his scepter. And the kings, they own all of the land. But kings will give part of their land they'll give part of their land to lords and nobles so that they can run that part of the land and collect the taxes. So lords and nobles, they fought for the king and they received land and castles called manors. So that is why we see all of these pictures of castles. These are the manors, and the land associated with them are owned by the lords and the nobles. Vassals. The vassals were given the land by the lord or noble, and this land was called a fief. So any of the land given to a vassal is now called a fief. Vassals had to work the land and do other duties for the lord or noble. What are some things that you think a vassal would do on the land if they had to work it and do other duties for the lord or noble? Some of the things that come to mind for me, especially looking at this picture, is I see that they have tools here. And these tools are used to plow the fields, to plant the crops and vegetables. Maybe they take care of animals. Maybe they tend to stables and they take care of the lord and noble. How did people get around back then? They got around by using horses, right? They didn't have cars, they used horses. So maybe those horses had to be taken care of. And do you think a lord or a noble are going to spend their time taking care of horses and scooping up horse poop and brushing the horses and cleaning off the horses' hooves? No, they are much higher in social class. And so they are going to say, I'm not going to do that. My vassals, my serfs can do that for me. So serf, now we know, is the lowest class in the feudal system. So these people are peasants. They are very poor. We know that they're kind of enslaved. They're bound to the land. So serfs were the lowest social class in the feudal system. They were very poor, and unlike vassals, were bound to the lord's land, like I just said, right? If the land was exchanged, serfs would be sold with the land. So we talked about that a little bit ago, where we said if you were born into a family of serfs, then this could happen to you. right? You would be bound to that land too. And if that land was sold, you would have to move with the land. Serfs also must pay the lord of the manor in crops and livestock while providing manual labor for the manor. So just like vassals, serfs also must do different duties, and that is called manual labor when they are doing things like plowing the fields themselves, if they are taking care of the animals, whatever they have to do themselves, that's manual labor. And they also must pay taxes towards the king as well, but they don't pay in money. They pay in, well, they might pay in a little bit of money, but usually it's in giving the lord a share of their crops. So by having these vassals and these serfs on the lord's land, the lord doesn't have to take care of their animals. They don't have to worry about farming, because these people who they give a little bit of land to will do all the farming for them, and in return will pay them those crops. So taxes. Vassals would pay their lord or nobles taxes. Instead of money, they would pay the lord with a share of the crops they grew and animals that they raised. In exchange, the lord would promise protection for the vassals. So I think that's the most important thing to remember about taxes, is that when these vassals and these serfs are paying their lord and paying their nobles taxes, what they are getting in return is the land that they get to use on the manor, and they're also getting protection. So if there were to be a war, if there were to be any sort of threat or any sort of people trying to steal or raid different areas, the lord or the noble is promising these vassals and these serfs, these people who work their land, protection. So that is our summary of the feudal system. And now what I'd like you to do is just take a few minutes and fill out your exit ticket. And I hope that you are looking forward to our Fun Friday experiment. I am. This is something that I've been working on for a few days. But make sure that you complete all of your work entirely. That's for CKLA, that's for ELA, CKLA, that's for math, and that's also for science and social studies, because as long as you have a fully complete assignment, then your name goes into the pizza drawing. And I know that you want that pizza, so make sure that you're filling out as many of the assignments that we have totally and completely, okay? And I look forward to seeing you all and talking to you on Friday.